On my 67th birthday, my son slammed the door in my face and told me I wasn't welcome in his home anymore. No cake, no hug, no explanation. Just the cold echo of his voice saying, "Leave, we're done." I stood outside in the rain, holding the gift I had bought for him, wondering how a father becomes a burden to his own child. I walked for nearly an hour before I sat on a bench near the old train station, trying to figure out what I had done so wrong. That's when a man slowly approached me, tapping the ground gently with a white cane. He was blind. He stopped right in front of me and said, "Excuse me, are you Michael?" I said no. He smiled softly. "Good, then maybe you can help me. I need someone to pretend to be my nephew. Just for one night." I stared at him, confused. Of all the people in the world, why ask a lonely old man who had just been thrown away by his own family? But what he told me next changed everything I thought I knew about my son, my past, and myself. Before I tell you what happened, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this video from? And if you believe no parent deserves to be abandoned, like this video and subscribe. Because this stranger's request led me into the most shocking night of my life. The blind man sat down beside me like we had known each other for years. He folded his white cane and rested it across his knees. "May I sit?" he asked gently. "You already did," I said with a tired laugh. He smiled again, a warm, almost familiar smile. "My name is Henry," he said, "and you look like you need company." I looked at the wet pavement, water gathering in little pools near my shoes. "Well, Henry, it's been a long day." "Birthdays usually are," he said quietly. My head snapped up. "How did you know it was my birthday?" He lifted his hand and pointed in my direction with surprising accuracy. "You're holding a gift bag," he said, "but not the way someone holds a gift they just received. You're holding it like a man holding something he never got to give." I swallowed a lump in my throat. He was right. "It was for my son," I said. "But he didn't want me there." Henry's expression softened. "I'm sorry," he said. "Children forget the weight parents carry." I nodded. There was something calming about Henry, something steady, almost wise. "So, why do you need someone to pretend to be your nephew?" I finally asked. Henry took a slow breath. "Because I have a sister," he said, "who I haven't seen in 17 years. And she's dying." My chest tightened. "Oh, I'm sorry," he continued. "She asked to see her nephew one last time. But my real nephew, Michael, he's in prison." No one told her. I felt a heaviness settle over us. "And you want me to pretend to be him?" Henry nodded. "If she finds out the truth now, it will break her. I just need someone kind, someone patient, someone who can give her peace." I stared at him. It felt like fate. Like someone, somewhere, saw me sitting alone in the rain and thought, he deserves a purpose tonight. But still, I hesitated. "Henry, why me?" He turned his face toward me, not exactly looking at me, but sensing me. "Because grief recognizes grief," he said. "And you're carrying something heavy." I exhaled shakily. He was right again. "Where does your sister live?" I asked. "A few blocks from here. It won't take long." I glanced at the ground. My son didn't want me. My granddaughter didn't call. Not even a card, a message, or a simple, "Happy birthday." And yet, here was a stranger, asking me to be something meaningful. "I'll do it," I said. Henry's cloudy eyes brightened. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're doing something kind, something my sister will never forget." He opened his cane and slowly stood up. "Shall we go?" he asked. I rose beside him. He held out his arm, not to guide me, but for me to guide him. It felt strangely good, like being needed again. We walked together through quiet streets, rain tapping gently on the rooftops above. "Henry," I said, "what should I know about Michael? I don't want to mess this up." Henry smiled as we walked. Michael was complicated. He loved my sister deeply, but he struggled, made bad choices, fell into the wrong crowd. I nodded. "And she still loves him?" "More than anyone," Henry said softly. She never lost hope. I swallowed. Does she know about you? That you're blind? Henry finished. No, she doesn't know yet. I haven't had the courage to tell her. She remembers me as a man who could fix anything. I'm not sure she's ready to see me like this. His honesty tugged at something deep in my chest. I thought about my own son, about how he looked at me earlier, like I was a burden, not a father. Henry, I said quietly, if you haven't seen your sister in 17 years, why now? He slowed his steps. Because she asked for me, he said, and I don't want her last memory to be of me as a coward. We walked the rest of the way in silence. Finally, we reached a small house with dim lights glowing in the window. This is it, Henry whispered. Her name is Margaret. I squeezed his arm gently. I'll follow your lead. He nodded. But before he knocked, he whispered something that chilled me to the bone. Just remember, my sister may not know you, but she might recognize something about you that neither of us expects. I frowned. What do you mean? Henry shook his head slowly. You'll understand inside. Then he lifted his hand and knocked on the door. And the moment the door opened, everything I thought I knew about why I was there began to unravel. The door opened slowly. A warm light spilled onto the porch, and in the doorway stood an older woman in a floral robe, breathing through an oxygen tube clipped under her nose. Her eyes, sharp but tired, moved from Henry to me. Her hands trembled. Henry, she whispered. He tilted his head toward her voice. Yes, Margaret, it's me. She reached out and touched his face, tracing his cheeks, then the bridge of his nose. You're thinner, she whispered. And your eyes. Henry caught her wrist gently. We'll talk about that later. But Margaret wasn't listening. Her gaze shifted to me. She stared so intently that I almost stepped back. You're Michael, she breathed. My boy, my nephew. My heart thudded in my chest. Henry squeezed my arm lightly, the signal we agreed upon. Yes, I said softly. I'm here. Margaret covered her mouth with both hands, tears immediately filling her eyes. Oh, thank God, she cried. Michael, I prayed every day that you would come back. Her voice carried a lifetime of pain. I felt my throat tighten. She stepped closer and touched my cheek, gently, with trembling fingers. You look just like your father, she whispered. I froze. My father? She nodded slowly. The same chin, the same eyes, the same way of standing, like you're carrying the whole world on your back. I forced a small smile. I didn't know that. She cupped my face with both hands. And your voice, just like him. I felt Henry stiffen beside me, just for a moment. Then Margaret hugged me. A weak, fragile embrace, but so full of love that it shook me. I'm so glad you're here, she whispered into my shoulder. My boy, I'm so glad you came. I held her gently, careful not to hurt her. Henry placed a hand on her back. Let's get inside, he said softly. You shouldn't stand too long. Margaret nodded, wiping her tears. Yes, come in, both of you. She led us into a cozy living room filled with old photographs, crocheted blankets, and the warm smell of lavender. She motioned for us to sit. I sat beside her. Henry sat across from us, hands folded tightly. Margaret held my wrist, still staring at me as if afraid I would disappear. Michael, where have you been all these years? She asked. I hesitated. Henry spoke first. He's been trying to rebuild his life. It hasn't been easy. Margaret nodded slowly, sadness washing over her face. I know he struggled, she whispered. I wasn't blind to it. I just never expected him to disappear completely. Her fingers tightened around mine. You're safe now. That's all that matters. I swallowed hard. Her love wasn't for me, but she believed I was her nephew. And for tonight, I had agreed to give her peace. Margaret, I asked gently, how have you been feeling? She smiled softly. Like someone who has more memories than time left to hold them. I didn't know what to say. She looked at Henry. Did the doctors tell you how long I have? Henry nodded solemnly. They did. And you'll stay with me? She asked. Of course, Henry said. Every day. She nodded, comforted. But then she looked at me again, that same piercing gaze. You came just in time, she said. There's something you need to know. My heart thudded. What is it? Margaret leaned back slowly, her breathing shaky. Your father, Michael's father. He was a complicated man, kind, but troubled. People thought he left because he didn't care. She looked down, but they were wrong. He left because he was protecting you. I froze. Protecting me? Margaret took my hand again. Michael deserves to know the truth before I die. Henry spoke quickly. Margaret, maybe tonight isn't the time. But Margaret shook her head. No, Henry, I've carried this for years. If I don't tell him now, it dies with me. I glanced at Henry. He was tense. Unusually tense. Margaret continued. Your father didn't abandon you. She squeezed my hand. He was trying to keep you away from the people who were after him. I blinked. After him? Why? Margaret inhaled shakily. Because of something he discovered. Something dangerous. Something that put all of us at risk. Henry whispered. Margaret, please. But she didn't stop. She looked at me with heartbreaking softness. Michael, your father wasn't just family. He was brave. And he didn't deserve what happened to him. A chill ran through me. What happened to him? Margaret didn't answer. Her eyes filled with tears again. She whispered, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Your father didn't leave you. A tear ran down her cheek. He was taken. Taken? My chest tightened. Taken by who? I asked. Margaret opened her mouth to speak, but a sudden coughing fit cut her off. Henry quickly moved beside her, rubbing her back, helping her breathe. Margaret, slow down, he murmured. She steadied herself after a moment. But the moment she caught her breath, she whispered something that made the hair rise on the back of my neck. They're still looking. Still watching. And if they find out you're here. She touched my cheek again. They'll come for you too. I froze. Henry froze. We all froze. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just about comforting a dying woman. This was about a secret. One buried deep. One tied to a man I had never met. And one that somehow involved me. Margaret looked at me again, tears streaming down her cheeks. You look just like him, she whispered. That's why I knew. The moment I saw you, I knew. Henry swallowed hard. Margaret, why did you say earlier that he would understand inside? Henry went pale. Margaret answered for him. Because you weren't chosen by accident. She took my hand with trembling fingers. You look like Michael's father. Because you are connected to him. My heart slammed into my ribs. Connected how? Margaret took a shaky breath. You're not just pretending to be my nephew. Her voice cracked. You might actually be family. My breath caught in my throat. You think I'm actually related to you? I asked. Margaret nodded, her eyes shining with tears. I don't think it, she said softly. I know it. Henry stiffened beside her. Margaret, don't jump to conclusions. She turned slowly toward him. You always protected the secrets of this family, even when it cost you everything. But he deserves the truth. I felt my chest tighten. What truth? I asked. Margaret looked at me for a long, trembling moment. Then she reached out and took both of my hands in hers. Your face, she whispered. It's not just similar, it's the same jawline, the same eyes. You look exactly like Daniel did when he was your age. Daniel? I frowned. Who is Daniel? Margaret gave me a sad smile. Michael's father, and my older brother. I froze. You're saying I look like your brother? She nodded. Like a mirror. A strange heaviness fell over me. Henry cleared his throat. Margaret, resemblance doesn't mean. But she interrupted him sharply. He deserves to know. All of it. She squeezed my hands tightly. Daniel had a son who disappeared 35 years ago. My entire body went cold. A son who disappeared, I repeated. Margaret nodded again. A boy named Elliot. My heart hammered against my ribs. Elliot. A name I had not heard in decades. A name I had tried my whole life to forget. I whispered, "My middle name is Elliot." Margaret placed her hand over her heart. I knew it. Henry's head shot up. What? Margaret kept speaking. Daniel loved his son more than anything. But when certain people came after him, he sent Elliot away to protect him. My throat closed. Sent him away. Protect him. Images flickered in my mind, old ones, buried ones. A dark room. A woman crying. A suitcase. A man's voice telling me, "You're safer far from here." Memories I'd spent a lifetime trying not to touch. I whispered. I was adopted. At 5 years old. My records were sealed. I never knew why. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God," she whispered. "Daniel did it. He sent you away, to save you." I stared at her, stunned. But, if I was Elliot, why didn't anyone look for me? Henry answered quietly. "They did, for years. But the people after your father were too dangerous. Your existence had to stay hidden." His voice cracked, the first crack I'd ever heard from him. "It was the only way to keep you alive." I felt dizzy. "I don't understand. Why didn't anyone ever come for me later, when the danger was gone?" Margaret shook her head. The danger was never gone. She looked at Henry, as if asking permission to continue. He sighed deeply. "Tell him," he said. "He deserves the truth now." Margaret inhaled shakily. "Your father discovered something. Something illegal. Something that involved powerful people. He refused to stay quiet." I blinked. "What did he discover?" She looked away. "No one knows exactly, only that it involved money, land, and men who didn't want the truth exposed." Henry added, "When he refused to hand over what he found, they came after him." My stomach knotted. "And then?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "He was taken," she whispered. "We never found him." My chest tightened so much I could barely breathe. I whispered, "So you think I'm Elliot, your brother's lost son?" She nodded, her hand trembling on my wrist. "I don't just think it. I feel it. And a mother, or an aunt, never forgets a face." I felt the room tilt around me. The walls seemed to close in. Henry stood and stepped closer to me. "Sit down," he said gently. "You look pale." I sank onto the couch. Memories I had buried deep came rushing back like a flood. The night I was taken from my home, a woman's scream, a door slamming, a man in a dark coat taking my hand, saying, "You mustn't cry, we're keeping you safe." I pressed my palms against my eyes. Margaret whispered, "Elliot, sweetheart, breathe." The room trembled around me. Henry knelt down in front of me. "Look at me," he said softly. "Whatever you remember, you're safe now." I lifted my head slowly, and for the first time since the night began, I saw Henry differently, not as a stranger, but as a man who looked at me like he knew me, maybe for longer than one night. "Henry," I whispered, "why did you really ask me to pretend to be Michael?" Henry swallowed hard, and for a moment, he couldn't answer. Margaret answered for him. "Because he recognized you before I did." Henry flinched. Margaret continued, "He recognized your voice, your walk, the way you cleared your throat. He recognized everything." She took a shaky breath. "Because Henry was the last person to see your father alive." I stared at Henry. "You were there?" His eyes shimmered. "Yes," he whispered, "and I made a promise that night." My heartbeat thudded in my ears. What promise? Henry took my hand, trembling far more than before. "I promised your father that if I ever found you again, I would tell you the truth." I felt the air leave my lungs. Margaret whispered, "And now you know." I whispered back, "No, not yet." I looked at Henry. "What happened to my father? And what were you protecting me from all these years?" Henry's face stiffened with a mixture of pain and fear. And then he said words that turned my blood cold. "You were never supposed to come back." If the people who hunted your father learn that you're alive, they will come for you next. Henry's words hit me like a punch. You were never supposed to come back. If the people who hunted your father learn that you're alive, they will come for you next. I stared at him, my hands numb. Henry, what are you talking about? Who are these people? Henry exhaled slowly, as if the weight of decades pressed on his chest. Sit down, he whispered. This part isn't easy. I sat, not because I wanted to, but because my legs suddenly felt too weak to hold me. Margaret leaned back against her pillows, eyes full of fear and heartbreak. Henry placed both hands on his cane, his knuckles tight. Your father, Daniel, he began, was a good man, but he stumbled onto something he wasn't meant to see. What exactly? I pressed. Henry shook his head. We don't know all the details. He kept it hidden, even from us. But we do know he uncovered a plan, land deals, money laundering, bribery, involving 3 powerful men. Men who controlled nearly everything in this town. Margaret added, they weren't just criminals. They were respected, wealthy, untouchable. Henry nodded. Your father tried to expose them, but before he could, he vanished. I swallowed hard. Vanished? Or was taken? Henry looked at me with a heartbreaking honesty. He never would have left you willingly. So yes, he was taken. Margaret wiped her eyes. I still remember the night it happened, she said softly. He kissed Elliot, good night. He said he'd be back soon. He never returned. A forgotten memory flashed in my mind. A man's silhouette. A dark coat. A whisper saying, don't open the door unless it's me. I blinked. Why did they come after him? Henry answered, because he had evidence. And because they were afraid he'd talk. I leaned forward. But what does any of this have to do with me? Henry's expression darkened. Because they didn't just want to silence your father. They wanted to erase everything connected to him, including his son. My pulse hammered. So they were looking for me too? Henry nodded. That's why your father sent you away. He made us promise to never reveal your identity. Not even to ourselves. I felt sick. My entire life, I thought I was abandoned. I thought no one wanted me. Margaret grabbed my hand gently. Oh, sweetheart, you were loved more fiercely than you can imagine. Your father gave up everything to keep you safe. I couldn't breathe. All these years, all the birthdays alone, the adoption, the unanswered questions. I whispered, why didn't anyone try to find me later? Henry lowered his head. We tried, but every time we got close, they resurfaced. Watching, listening. Margaret nodded. We feared they'd hurt you, or use you, so we stayed silent. Silence filled the room, a silence so heavy it bent the walls around us. Finally, I looked at Henry. What about now? Are they still a threat? Henry hesitated. Yes, but in different ways. I frowned. What do you mean? Henry clenched his jaw. Those men are old now, but one of them still holds power. One of them still influences decisions. One of them still pulls strings from the shadows. My stomach tightened. Who? Henry looked almost ashamed. His name is Richard Holden. Margaret's lips trembled. He is the reason your father never came back. I'd never heard the name before. Who is Richard Holden? Henry took a deep breath. A man who built an empire by tearing families apart. Margaret whispered, and he has a son. A chill crawled up my spine. A son? Who? Henry swallowed hard. Alan Holden. My entire body froze. Because Alan Holden was the father of my daughter-in-law. The wealthy businessman my son admired blindly. The same man my son often said he wanted to build a future under. And suddenly, everything clicked. I whispered, my son, he chose Alan over me. He threw me out on my birthday because he wanted to impress Alan. Margaret nodded sadly. He didn't know the truth. He didn't know what Alan's family did to yours. Henry leaned closer. Your son didn't betray you out of hate. He betrayed you out of ignorance. Because Alan Holden has been grooming him for years, the way his father groomed powerful men decades ago. My pulse thundered. So my son pushed me away because he thought I was in the way of his career? Henry nodded. Yes. He sees Alan Holden as an opportunity, a door to a life he wants. And Holden knows who I am? I asked. Henry shook his head. Not yet. But if he ever finds out you're Elliot, he'll do anything to keep the past buried. I sat back, shaking. Margaret squeezed my hand gently. Your son hasn't lost you, sweetheart. He's just walking down the wrong path. A path Holden built. I whispered. So he threw me out. But he didn't know he was throwing away the truth of his own family. Henry placed a trembling hand on my shoulder. That's why you must be careful. If Holden senses who you are, he won't hesitate to finish what his father started. I swallowed hard. And what do I do now? Henry's voice softened. You start by knowing who you are. Not the abandoned child. Not the forgotten father. But the son of a man who died protecting you. I wiped my eyes. Margaret whispered, and when the time is right, your son will learn the truth too. Henry added, but not tonight. Tonight, we keep you safe. I nodded slowly. But deep inside, a storm had begun. A storm that would soon force me to confront my past. My son, and the one man who destroyed my father's life. Alan Holden. Henry insisted on walking me home that night. The streets were quiet, but my heart wasn't. Every step felt heavier, like I was walking toward a past I never asked for. When we reached my small apartment building, Henry stopped. There's one more thing, he said softly. Your son, he didn't throw you out because he hates you. I sighed. Henry, he humiliated me on my birthday. He told me to leave. How can that not be hate? Henry shook his head. He told you to leave because Alan Holden told him to. My breath caught. Henry continued. Holden's been shaping your son quietly, offering him opportunities, praising him, making him feel valuable. Your son thought he was choosing success, not betraying his father. I felt the weight of that truth settle deep into my bones. He chose a stranger's approval over my love, I whispered. He didn't know, Henry said. Holden hid your identity. He hid your father's story. He hid everything. I looked away. Why tell me all this now? Henry placed his hand on my shoulder. Because your son will learn the truth soon. Holden has been digging, and he's close to realizing who you are. My heart thudded. And when he does, Henry's cloudy eyes landed on mine. He will come after you, not to hurt you, but to apologize. I didn't believe it. Not then. But I was wrong. I was making coffee when I heard frantic banging on my door. Not a knock, a pounding. I opened it, and my son David stood there, eyes red, breathing hard, shaking. Dad, he whispered. Oh God, Dad. Before I could speak, he wrapped his arms around me. He hadn't hugged me like that since he was a child. David, what happened? He pulled back, tears spilling from his eyes. I was at a dinner last night with Alan Holden, and I overheard something. Something I shouldn't have. My blood ran cold. David swallowed hard. He said your name, Elliot. Said you should have died like your father. Everything around me went silent. David continued, voice breaking. When I realized what he meant, when I realized who you really are, what they did to your father. More tears. I felt sick. I threw away the only parent who ever loved me. I let a monster convince me you were worthless. I steadied him. David, it's okay. No, it's not, he cried. I listened to the wrong man. I betrayed you. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. His voice cracked into pieces. I gripped his shoulders. Son, you came back. That's what matters. He shook his head fiercely. I won't let them hurt you. Not like they hurt your father. Not like I hurt you. I felt tears fill my eyes. You didn't lose me, I whispered. Not forever. David hugged me again, tighter this time. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone. Like a family broken by lies. was finally finding its way back to truth. Henry stayed with Margaret until her final breath 2 weeks later. Before she passed, she held my hands and whispered, "Tell your son who he truly is. Not the man who threw you out, but the man who came back." And she was right, because sometimes family isn't lost. It's simply misguided. And sometimes a stranger with a white cane can show you more love than the people who share your blood. But in the end, the truth brings everyone home. Did you like my story? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. More life stories are waiting for you.